the different look at things and the different view of someone who is neurodivergent, someone who has dyslexia, can really be a superpower.
Welcome to Talking About Kids. I am your host, R. Bradley Snyder, researcher, activist, and author of The 5 Simple Truths of Raising Kids. My guest today is Sasha Saidman. Sasha is the author of multiple children's books, including First Day, All Out of Ducks, and, my personal favorite, Melonade. As you will hear, one of the things that makes Sasha special is her willingness to unabashedly explore the adversity that she has experienced in order to write authentic books that resonate with young children and their caregivers alike. Talking About Kids is sponsored in part by the Arizona Department of Health Services Must Stop Bullying campaign through its Title V Maternal and Child Health Program. For more information, go to muststopbullying.org. Authors like Sasha Saidman do not come on this podcast to meet me. They come to get the word out about their books and hopefully to have an impact on kids. So if Sasha's books resonate with you, please share this podcast among your friends and with your professional network. And now, the interview.
I kind of refer to myself casually as a journal kid, where I journal big emotions. So when I was an adolescent, teenager, I would journal, my latest crush, a bad day at school, and so forth. So that kind of followed me into adulthood. And with motherhood came a lot of big emotions. And some of them were joy and excitement. Some of them were complete exhaustion. And some of them were, how do I help my child to clean? How do I connect with my child? How do I explain my adoption to my biological children? And so I started to write these things down. And the first book that I wrote officially was First Night. And I wrote it when my daughter was maybe 6 weeks old. And my mom could not soothe her. And I came in the room and she said, well, she knows your heartbeat. That's all she knows. She knows your smell. And so I started thinking about that and thinking about whether my mom who adopted me had that concern and how that's such a beautiful thing for a biological mother to have and that I have with my children. And I wanted to write about that. And that's how First Night came. And I also knew that I wanted to write about the side of adoption. So I knew that First Day was going to come at some point because I wanted to share that part of my life as well. And I personally love writing and from experience because I love reading from experience. I read a lot of Ellen Hopkins books growing up. And she herself was a mother to a very troubled adolescent. And she spoke a lot about in her books the struggles that her and her daughter went through and what she saw firsthand. And I felt kind of the rawness and the realness of that. And I really connected with the words she said. So my hope with my children's books is that because they're coming from a place of a very raw, very real reality of motherhood right now, that I'm really in the thick of it with 2 toddlers, that other moms will connect with that writing as well. And their children will too.
Sasha, you're really open about some of the adversities that you've faced.
Mhm.
And I want to talk about dyslexia because you start one of your books, and I think it's your book Melonade, where
Mhm.
you in the intro to it, you have a page for adults, and you explain, dyslexia, and you explain
Mhm.
your history with it. I have to ask, like, because in that paragraph where you're explaining your history with dyslexia, you also mentioned that you're a visual learner, right?
Mhm.
And that
Yes.
words were not always easy for you. So, what happened with you? Can you pinpoint when the dyslexia stopped being an impediment and you were able to view both reading and writing as a source of strength and comfort? When did that shift happen with you?
At some point in high school, I was tested officially with my dyslexia to really see where my strengths and weaknesses are. And I remember coming home and I was talking to my mom, and she said, "Well, you're visual. You can't necessarily gain as much information as easily through just reading pages." So that was kind of the point where I started to change that, where I started to realize that my strength was in visuals.
Hmm.
And so when I write, it really starts in a visual place. So, for instance, a boat in the kitchen. I was up at 11 o'clock at night cleaning up after my kids, and there was a toy boat in the kitchen. And I had already written one book, and I looked at it and I said, I wonder what my kids see. And I thought that would be a great book, is what a child sees when they play. And I looked around my house and I saw a cow in the laundry basket. And I saw a dinosaur in my kitchen. And I started seeing all these things. And I just have this scribble page just written down of all of these ideas. But it really starts off as a visual thing. And I'm so grateful because both of my parents are huge anchor points and helpers for me in spelling and making sure that I'm getting the right uh, sentences and grammar right, because I still slip up. I feel
Hmm.
like everyone does. But as a dyslexic author, that's something that I do still struggle with. But I have a huge passion for it. And I feel like when you have a passion, I really enjoy doing this. So it doesn't feel like work most days. There is a lot of hard work that goes into it. But when I enjoy it so much, I enjoy watching my kids read the books and look at the pages and see other families read them and talk to people like you and spread the word about dyslexia and adoption and all these great things. It really just feels like a joy. So I can take that and kind of push through those more difficult things like grammar and punctuation and larger word spelling that I can still struggle with, and turn it into books for my kids, and I can talk to them about it, and it's great.
Well, I want to keep on this theme of this of the dyslexia because I was really struck by your book Melonade, and
Mhm.
because we're talking about kids' books, listeners, there's going to be spoilers here. I'm sorry. Don't get mad if I'm ruining this children's book for you. Um, but I think it's okay because I think this is a book that you're going to want to share with the kids in your life. Um, so we have your main character in it is a young woman named Sam. And can you
Mhm.
tell a little bit to the listeners about what happened with Sam?
Yeah, so Sam on the last day of school sees a bulletin board with all these ideas of activities, and she spots a Melonade stand poster. And she starts having all these ideas visually kind of burst from her head, which is really how I would see them. And she's walking home and has all these ideas of what it will look like with the reds and the greens and just these beautiful colors. And she goes home and writes it all down. And she creates this Melonade stand and makes Melonade. And towards the end of the book, she sees the other children who maybe had saw that Melonade stand flyer and realized that her brain, being dyslexic, had flipped around the letters for lemon and melon. And the other children had read that it was a lemonade stand, not a Melonade stand.
And we'll pause right there because other stuff
Yeah.
happens. But
Hmm.
one of the things that there is this moment because you do such a good job, I feel, in this book of communicating the enthusiasm that Sam has for
Hmm.
this activity. She really gets into creating her Melonade stand, like you said, and it's beautiful and it's colorful, and she takes a lot of care. And then there's that moment when she realizes that she read it differently than the other kids on her block.
Hmm.
And that always struck me because knowing a lot of neurodivergent kids, I marvel at their enthusiasm. I feel like they take on all these new activities and these new ventures with such passion, and you just sometimes are there watching them get kicked back, right? And it
Hmm.
happens with Sam. In your own life, is this something that you have figured out how to overcome, that where your neurodivergence brings you to this place where you recognize, oh, and you get that like that gut punch, and then you're able to
Oh,
overcome it. So,
oh, definitely. Every day. I've read things incorrectly in front of people. I've
mm,
pronounced things incorrectly. Um, and I've gotten really excited for things, not fully reading what it was. I mean, I've read parts of articles and gotten really enthusiastic about it and then didn't read the second half because it felt like a lot and I don't know the entire story and I'm talking about it and then the conversation continues with my peers and I can't continue it and I just feel like, "Oh, what did I miss? Did I miss something? Am I not fully there? Do I not fully understand?" And you have this like self-doubt moment. But something that I know Sam takes from it in the story that I also took is that looking at things in a different way can give you a new perspective. And that is so valuable in today's day and age, is having that new perspective. I mean, you look at kitchens with white cabinets and white countertops and laminate white floors, and then you look at these pictures of these green ones with yellow knobs that are artistic that someone found at World Market, or and it's just like they're so creative and beautiful and they have the same functionality, but they have a whole new originality. And so that's really what is praised in this book, is that the different look at things and the different view of someone who is neurodivergent, someone who has dyslexia, can really be a superpower.
And for Sam, that comes in the form of somebody walking down the street that had never heard of Melonade and were really enthusiastic to give it a try, right?
Yeah,
And so,
and I actually made Melonade this past year in honor of the book, and it was really well received, and I had never thought to make it before, but it was really great.
is there somebody in your life that was that woman who gave you a try, that gave showed an appreciation for your different outlook, that really kind of helped you on this path?
Yeah, I think for me, I went to the Lab School of Washington starting in fourth grade, which was specifically for learning disabilities and dyslexia. And this book has multiple teachers listed in it as who I'm honoring. And really, it's those teachers who were those anchor points. It was my theater teacher, Sean Miskell, who I read and memorized sonnets of Shakespeare. And I really found that that visual of connecting with the character and memorization really helped me with reading and confidence and reading in public, that now doing things like this or going on TV really have helped me with. And the first teacher I ever had in fourth grade, Kathy McSweeney, she was the first teacher that I ever felt like really saw me as someone worthy of learning and worthy of putting time and effort into, because before I just felt like I was always pushed to the back of the class and kind of figure at some point she'll figure it out, but if not, I'm not going to make it my problem. It'll be the next teachers or the next teachers. And at the lab school I was given you
Mm.
know everything, every opportunity to blossom and flourish and learn and grow and find my thing, and I found this and I love it.
You don't take on small topics, Sasha, at
I
all.
don't.
So we just talked about Melonade, which is kind of centered on dyslexia. You have a First Day Story, which is a
Mhm.
book about your first day with an adopted child,
Mhm.
and it's almost a kind of a guided meditation about reflecting on
Yeah.
the day and the elements of it. Tell me a little bit more about First Day Story.
So, First Day, an adoption story, was inspired very vaguely from my adoption. I had a book when I was a baby called Tell Me Again About the Night You Were Born.
Mm.
And it perfectly depicted what my parents went through in their adoption, which was a mommy and a daddy flew on a plane to go pick up a baby from a hospital. And I resonated with that and I had it. And I have a really beautiful open adoption. But I know that for a lot of adoptees, that's not their story. One of my goals for writing First Day was to make it as broad and have as much analogies for these moments in adoption as possible to allow for families and children to really place themselves into it. So we have all different families illustrated. The cover of
Hmm.
it has all different faces of children of all races and ages, because adoption is love, and really it allows for you to actually write in your own story at the end, which was really important to me to have this journal, because that's a piece that I didn't have.
Mm.
And I really wish my parents had had a specific place that could have been in a keepsake folder that talked about their experience on that first day and that first few days together as a family, and that bond that I made with my family and that they made with my birth family.
And it is something that that children love hearing about, that first encounter. So I know from experience that that is something that adopted children like hearing about. So having the prompt to write that out and to keep it, I think, is something that would be useful for any adopted parent, adopting parent. I also want to say that I really liked a line from First Day. You say, "Such a beautiful face, though not mirroring mine," and
Mhm.
it works well with the illustration. But I like how you hold these different ideas of beauty equal. And I thought that was
Mhm.
a very nice line. So thank you for writing that.
Of course, yeah, no, I had a lot of help because I'm not an adopted parent. So I reached out to any adoptee or adoptive parent or someone in the adoption world that I knew to really get their input. And my mom actually wrote the back cover of the book. And I've shared the book with my birth mother, who's very proud and has it in her house. And um, but yeah, I really wanted it to depict that beauty of adoption that, you don't have these features of your adoptive parents, but you also grow to have them. Someone told me I had a line in there originally about how you don't have my smile. And someone pointed out that adoptees often mimic their
Yeah,
parents' smiles. So that's actually something that we do develop, and that I do have my mom's smile. And so we changed a few lines in there to make sure it fit properly. But I always love that little tidbit because we do inherit certain physical aspects of our parents and how we hold ourselves and what we do. My mom was an English teacher
yeah.
and I'm now a writer. So,
Well, I think it's also really useful as an adopted child ages to have these
Mhm.
kind of physical representations of who they are and their stories as well, because I think
Mhm.
that they're the conversations that happen around adoption, especially as children become adolescents and things, they can be charged. But having these
Mhm.
things around them all of the time somehow makes it easier to talk about it and be open about it so that it's never um, a surprise, so that it's always
Yeah.
something that they can be aware of and proud of and part of their
Mhm.
development. So I absolutely applaud that. The so the Now I'm going to go into this third area of your kind of these topics that you take on, and I'm kind of astounded that you have the bravery to do this. I am gonna take an issue with it, though. The issue I have
Okay.
is, so you've written a book called All Out of Ducks, and
Yes.
I had read your bio, and I had read things, that about you, prior to this interview, but I was
Mhm.
taken aback by this book a little bit. Sasha, I gotta tell you, I don't I think this is a children's book for adults. I think it
It
is I was trying to put myself in the shoes of a young person reading this. I think it's for the parents, and I don't wanna get
Oh.
in too much into it, but I think that it is in parents don't feel strange about picking up this book by Sasha that's called All Out of Ducks and just read it for yourself, I think, first and
Mhm.
foremost. Then if you can
Yes.
figure out how to make it part of a discussion with your children, wonderful. But this is for you, and that's my I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Sasha, that's my take on the book. It's am I wrong?
No, it's so funny you say that because I have a book that was gifted to me during my first pregnancy, and I don't know if you can curse on this channel,
Sure.
so bleep me out if I need to. It's called Go to Sleep.
Mhm.
And it has the F word multiple times in this book, and I have it on my shelf. I've never read it to my children, but it's very much just a nostalgia thing for me because I have felt those words at my core
Right.
on numerous occasions. And originally, this book actually did have those words in it. And I have a girlfriend who has a 6-year-old son now, and she said, I love it, but I would never even have it in my house because he's learning how to read.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, what do parents do? They stub their toe and they say fudge. They fall down and they say popsicle. They use all of these random words to blur out the ones they really want to say. And so I figured this is a great, kind of hysterically funny book of a parent's day with a toddler,
Yeah.
of just wanting to let it all out, but it's also the beauty of it and the how short-lived it is and how those days feel so long and you're all out of ducks, but you do it over and over again because we just love our children
Yeah.
so much. The important aspect to this book was delivering to parents and mothers, as a mother, as that I am a mother, that it is hard
Right.
and it is exhausting and it is okay to ask for help and it is okay to find help. And I don't know if you knew, but the phone number on the front of the book is the National Maternal Health Hotline phone number for parents to call or text at any time, 24/7, 365, for maternal health with postpartum depression. And I had postpartum depression, and I did not know this phone number
Mm.
existed until well after, and I wish it had been more out there. So it was very important to be on the front cover, to be on the main imagery of this book, but also just to have something funny that you can gift to your friends at their baby shower as, hey, I was there, you'll probably be there in a few months, and it's okay, you're not alone. It's just kind of hysterical that we all go through this, but we also don't talk about
Right.
it. We don't talk about the difficulties. We talk about the beauties and how cute they are and how, baby hiccups are. And we don't talk about the postpartum and the loneliness and the isolation and just every day waking up all out of ducks and just not having anything else to give. So I really
Right.
wanted to have that in a book, and that was how it came out from a mother to other mothers.
Well, since you mentioned it, let me go ahead and
Mhm,
share that number for the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline.
mhm,
It is 1-833-852-6262 or 1-833 TLC Mama. And of course, this will also be in the show notes if you want to go back and look at that. And
mhm,
just so you know, the hotline, as Sasha mentioned, it's a very compassionate service. This isn't just about if you're at the end of your rope, you can go there with small questions and big questions. In fact,
mhm,
don't wait to get to the end of your rope. If you're struggling,
mhm.
you just want a second opinion, you just want to share what you're feeling. That's why it's there, and it's a great resource. So thank you so much,
It
Sasha,
is.
for sharing it. But back to the
Definitely,
book.
and
Yeah.
text it when your babies are sleeping, you don't
Yeah.
have to make a noise. That was the most helpful part of it.
Right, they have a text interface. So for
Mhm,
all of you, that's you can be texting and no one can know what you're doing, which will be great too.
mhm. Yep.
Uh, be and I think that it's funny that you mentioned that. There's such pressure for parents to appear like they're great
Mhm.
parents. And this is a really
Yeah.
big distinction because I've actually done this research with some mothers before. And there was the pressure to be a good parent and the
Mhm.
pressure to look like one. And they are different pressures, but we feel them both. And one of the things that I really like about All Out of Ducks is that the the frustration, it's not even frustration, the maybe the weariness that the main character
Mhm.
is expressing during over this book as they're saying these wonderfully phrased kind of expletives. uh, at the same time, they're being an awesome parent, by the way,
Mhm.
right? This whole
Yep.
time, they're showing the love, and they're involved in the
Mhm.
activities, and they're being very present and attentive,
Mhm.
and they're just sharing. Boy, I don't think I've got it in me today, but they do because they keep going,
They
don't they?
do. They do, and I have experienced that. Every single woman I know who is a parent has experienced those
Yeah,
moments of just, "We're at the park, I'm in my pajamas, I haven't gotten out of them in 3 days, but we're at the park, we did it," and it's just like, "You're doing great." Like, your kids are loving their life, and I love that idea of just the memories. I've seen videos about this where children will be asked how their day was, and the parent asks how their day was,
mm,
and the parents are so negative on themselves and just, "Oh, well, we stopped at McDonald's because I didn't have time to cook and I hadn't gone grocery shopping, and, they took these really long baths and I just sat there on the toilet 'cause
yeah,
I was so tired," and the kids are like, "We got chicken nuggets, it was great, we had a fry fight with mom, we had a really long bubble bath, and we had, like, all these bubbles, and it was so much fun, and we played scuba diver," and it's just like they have this whole
they
other
do.
visual, and it's beautiful, and it's like, parents, we need to remember that, like, we're raising tiny people.
Yeah,
They are exhausting, and we don't have time for ourselves, and we're doing great. Like, if all you have today is just to sit on the sofa and play Legos or just do one thing and make frozen waffles, like, you've fed a human life,
yep.
you've kept them alive for the day, you've kept them going, like, that is a huge accomplishment.
The presence and attention and the
Mm,
activities are always secondary, aren't they? And there's
mhm,
actually
they are.
really good, again, there's really good science behind this and really good research. And I was actually involved in a study of adolescence, and when we gave this big list in a survey to a bunch of teenagers about what would make them happier, and we threw in everything from the body that I want to
Mhm.
designer clothes to more money, and the top ranked one was more time with my parents. And it blew people away. And you talk to parents, and they say, especially parents of adolescents, and they say what you just did, which is, my kids didn't want me around. They didn't. They acted like they were bored. I didn't know
Mhm.
what to say. We just kind of sat there. They didn't respond. I just talked. They said nothing. I asked
Mhm.
questions. They answered me in grunts. And then you ask
Yep.
the teen, and the teen's like, "Yeah, I really enjoyed the time I spent with my parents." So
Yeah.
this is a good lesson to learn at their at your child's youngest ages, and just keep that
Mhm.
practice going all throughout adolescence.
Definitely. And understanding that people see those 2 situations super differently. So that's just life,
Yeah,
your adolescents and your toddlers to the parents. We see 2 situations in completely different views and completely different eyes, and trying to put ourselves into their shoes is important so that we can know we're appreciated. I mean, my son is 3 years old, and he'll look at me and say, "I love you, mommy."
yeah.
And I'm just like, my heart just melts, and he calls my mom cute, and I think that that's, like, the sweetest thing in the world is his granny is cute, and I'm just, like, holding on to these little moments when they're little, because when he's having a tantrum about wanting cookies before dinner, I'm like, "He calls me beautiful, grandma's cute, like,
Yeah,
everything's good, we got this."
that's awesome. That's amazing. You know, I the other thing that in thinking about all of your titles together as a whole, the ones that I
Mhm,
was privy to for this, it
mhm,
does seem that you're conscious about these being books that are to be shared. These aren't books that
mhm,
you hand over to a young reader and then walk
mhm,
away. These are about that conversation between the adult and the child. Am I reading that
mhm.
correctly?
Yeah, 100%. I think that I really enjoy reading to my children. I really love that connection, and I love seeing that connection with others. I love when the grandparents come over and when my husband reads, and even when older children read to my
Mm,
kids. I think it's just really beautiful, and it's this time of wind down. Before you came on, my daughter sat here and pulled all 3 of my books off the shelf that she could read, and we read maybe a page from each. But each one, she would point out things like bunnies and dinosaurs and boats and watermelons and fruit and all these things, and she's developing language from that, and it's such a point of connection versus sitting her on the floor with one and watching her rip the pages up slowly one by one. These are really ones that I can share with her and watch her mind wander, and that's another reason I love my artist too, is the way she does the art in these. There's so many small imageries within one big image that younger children can pick out, like a basket with bananas and apples. Like those are very basic children's first words that my kids learned. And you can point those out on the pages and you can see those images and kind of have that inspiration to work on that other language skills, not just the book itself.
you talk about in your branding, you talk about the world of Sasha Sedman. What's next for the world of Sasha Sedman?
Um, We have a few. We have a few in the works. I myself struggled with mental illness a lot, so I'm very passionate about that, and I'm working on a larger book for adults. But for children, I want to write a book that talks about the skills that parents and caretakers can have with young
Mm,
children to work on those very big emotions that children often have, and how we can help them in really simple ways, like teaching them how to ground themselves in a moment by pointing out, what do you smell? What do you feel? What texture is this like fabric on your shirt? And just like very small things that even as a mother who understands those types of things,
mhm.
I still have trouble with remembering when my children are in crisis, when they're losing it, when they're scared. My son does karate now and he wants me on the mat with him. And, I sometimes try and work through those things of mommy's sitting right here. And no, I have to be on there with him. And it's like, okay, so how do we work through this in the moment where we can work through this fear of what I assume is abandonment or fear that he's going to turn around
Mm.
and I'm not going to be sitting here anymore, and work on this where he can feel that really strong attachment in these very public areas. And so I want to kind of do that in a way with books. So that's coming probably this summer. And I do have a whimsical one called Duncan the Garden Gnome that will be dropping this spring, all about friendship. And even if you're very, very small, you matter, and the impact that you have matters. And I'm excited about that. I love gardening. I love spring. So that was one I was working on last year that kind of waited until this spring.
Well, that's wonderful. And I look forward to those. And what I can say to my listeners is if you read any of Sasha's books, you will look forward to the next one. Sasha, thank you so much for being on Talking About Kids. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
That was Sasha Saidman. For more information about Sasha and her books, visit talkingaboutkids.com. And when you do visit talkingaboutkids.com, send me a note. Let me know what you think about the podcast. I pay attention to every bit of feedback. The Talking About Kids theme song is by the Senators. For more of their music, go to thesenatorsmusic.com. And remember, kids are young goats and young humans, and the difference is that young goats are easier to manage.